It started with a crash loud enough to silence the entire Xarnak diplomatic delegation. The hull of the Terran freighter Raleigh's Oath buckled inward with the sound of tortured steel. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the ship screamed against the docking clamps, refusing to die quietly. From within the battered wreckage stumbled a single man, blood caked across his temple, sleeves torn, both hands shaking. The Xarnak security officers, tall and reptilian with glinting chitin plates, stepped back despite their environmental suits. Not because of his injuries, because he wasn't carrying a weapon. "Why is the Terran unarmed?" hissed Consul Zatir, recoiling. "Where is his kinetic launcher, his plasma scythe? Surely even a human wouldn't travel unarmed through the breach corridor." The security officer scanned the man again. Negative energy readings, no exoframe, no implants, no weapons, just standard tissue. The human name, Matt Keller. Job, ship technician status. Half-conscious, slumped against the hangar bulkhead and spat blood. Then, slowly, he raised one trembling hand. "Water," he croaked. "Please, anyone got water?" No one moved. Their fear wasn't rooted in his voice or his condition. It was the hand. The hand with 5 jointed fingers, scraped raw and burnt, still twitching with life. It was supposed to be a simple emergency docking Terran registry freighter struck by a micro-comet. Minimal crew, minimal cargo. Yet every camera on the station turned to follow Matt as he was carried through the halls. He wasn't shackled. He didn't need to be. The Xarnak had learned from the last time. Chains meant nothing when a human's bare hands could tear a panel loose, fuse it into a makeshift blade, and incapacitate 4 guards with nothing more than creativity and a sense of desperation. Inside the med bay, the Xarnak nurse refused to touch him until 3 armed guards entered the room. Matt's injuries were extensive: a dislocated shoulder, 2 cracked ribs, bruising along the left hip, and second-degree burns on the fingers and palms. He winced as they prodded around the ribs, every movement sending a shock of pain through his side. "You'll need imaging for the ribs," said the translator, the mechanical voice stilted and uneasy. "We suspect fractures." Matt grunted. "Suspect? Just scan me, or give me a deep breath test. I can tell you which one's busted." The guards tightened their grips on their stun spears. The translator's voice dropped to a murmur. "Please do not describe your diagnostic methods. It unsettles the staff." Matt laughed, then winced. "Unsettled? Buddy, I'm the one strapped to a table with 6 holes in my side." "You're not restrained," the translator corrected. "Yeah." 2 days later, after a round of scans confirmed 2 rib fractures and 1 partial collapse of the left lung, Matt sat on a bench in the station's central dome, clutching a thermal pack to his side. He breathed shallowly and methodically, counting seconds between each inhalation. It wasn't bravery, it was survival. Each full breath came with a price he couldn't afford to pay. Zatir watched him from a distance, noting every twitch of the human's hand as he flexed the fingers. He whispered to his advisor, "You see it, yes? He is mapping something, running a calculation. Unlikely he is injured." "No, humans do not rest. They plan, even when weak." The advisor hesitated. "Should we confine him again?" Zatir narrowed his eyes. "No, let him walk. If he wanted to harm us, he would have built something already." And in truth, Matt had been thinking a lot about the reactor on his ship, about the weird oscillation he'd detected before the crash, and about the lack of decent tools on this glorified orbital turtle shell. He stood slowly, legs unsteady. His body was in no shape for labor. But his hands? They weren't done yet. He first asked for access to the fabrication bay 3 days into his recovery. The answer was a swift no. A second request brought him a pair of plastic forceps and an observer drone. That would have stopped most beings. Not Matt. By the end of the week, he'd repaired 2 diagnostic scanners, recalibrated an airlock, and hand-fabricated a micropump from scrap polymer and surgical tubing. He did it all seated, his torso braced and arm still in a sling. The guards watched from behind a reinforced panel. He constructed a peristaltic pump using only discarded tubing and pressure seals, one muttered, horrified. And then used it to clear the injector clog in their food recycler, another added. I tasted meat today, real, textured meat. No one is supposed to fix the recycler. It is sacred. By week 2, Matt had cobbled together a functioning prosthetic for one of the station's disabled drones, using melted furniture joints and a salvaged servomotor. The drone now followed him around like a loyal dog, occasionally chirping in binary affection. Matt named it Gus. Jatir held an emergency session of the station's Oversight Council. We feared human weapons, their rail cannons, their orbital hammers, their antimatter lances. They have none of those here, said the medical director. No, they have Matt, and he has hands. The turning point came on day 15, during a decompression emergency on the medical deck. A coolant pipe burst, spraying vaporized ammonia through the corridor and forcing an immediate evacuation. The deck door jammed. The system failed to auto-seal. That meant if the second door gave way, half the deck would vent into space. Before the engineers could arrive, Matt was already moving. Cradling his ribs, teeth gritted, he slipped past a frightened technician and entered the buffer zone. No suit, just gloves and a face mask. Where's he going? Shouted the deck supervisor. He said he saw the hinge tension drop. That means the door's off alignment. He's going to realign it. Realign it with what? We have no power. The response came 30 seconds later, when the door slammed shut with a thunderous clang, the station shuddering from the impact. When they opened the lock, Matt was slumped on the floor, unconscious. Both palms were blistered, and 3 of his fingers dislocated from the force. He'd braced the door back into place using the bent frame of a supply cart and wedged it closed with his bare hand. It took 9 stitches, 2 splints, and a full day of rehydration before he was stable again. When he woke, the first thing he asked for was not medication. It was a wrench. By day 20, the rumors reached the central colonies. Not of Terran weapons. Of a Terran technician who could stop depressurization with nothing but his own body weight and some leverage. Who fixed medical equipment using recycled utensils. Who built functional robotics from a drawer of broken replacement joints. Xarnak officers began requesting to observe him in person, some out of awe, some out of fear. The galaxy had feared humanity for their machines, their technologies, their fleet firepower. No one had truly considered the power of the human hand. Matt never asked for thanks. Not because he was noble, because he was in pain. His ribs still ached. He moved like a man 20 years older, every breath an effort, every grip a gamble with a torn tendon or healing nerve. When a young ensign asked why he didn't just rest, he only muttered, because no one else knows what a carburetor diaphragm looks like in this sector. When he wasn't fixing things, he practiced. Not martial arts, not weapons, dexterity. He rolled nuts and bolts across his fingers, built puzzles blindfolded, rebuilt Gus again and again with improvements. The Xarnak called it madness. He called it preparation, because he knew sooner or later something worse would happen. Something that wouldn't require a weapon, only hands, and a reason. The supply barge Kivar docked without ceremony on the 23rd day. Its crew didn't disembark for pleasantries or trade. They came armed and sealed, speaking only to the station command before vanishing into the lower cargo decks. Matt watched them from a viewing corridor, one hand flexing instinctively as he noticed something that no one else seemed to care about. They're not wearing standard engineering suits, he said to Gus, who chirped once. No ID markers, no thermal tags either. They're masking loadouts. He should have left it there. But Matt had been a technician on deep salvage runs, corporate retrofits, and high-risk drift recoveries. That sort of work tuned the senses. And those suits? They weren't for vacuum. They were for war. Matt didn't trust the Xarnak to believe him. Not because they were malicious, because they had protocols, committees, layers of authorizations and ceremonial reverence, and Matt had neither time nor patience for reverence. He began his own inspection under the pretense of repairing a malfunctioning cargo vent relay. He wore no badge, he carried no weapon. Just Gus on his shoulder and a belt pouch filled with wire cutters, signal tape, and a folding screwdriver. He found the first anomaly in storage bay 9C. 6 crates labeled hydrospanners that were too heavy for hydrospanners. Too dense, magnetic shielding probably. He tapped the corner and felt the subtle hum of an active containment field. Energy weapons, compact ones. The second anomaly came when he saw one of the Kivar crew installing a relay node behind a thermal exhaust fan. No maintenance records, no authorization, just a strange, dull-finished panel that didn't match the rest of the station's architecture. "Hey," Matt said, approaching. "That's not standard wiring. Your conduit's rated for 40, but this fan pulls 60. You'll get blowback." The figure didn't speak. Matt reached out and lifted the fan cover, ignoring the throb in his fingers. His hands weren't at full strength yet, but they remembered what leverage felt like. "What's this node supposed to feed?" No answer. Matt stepped closer, catching his reflection in the black visor. "You're not maintenance crew, and that's not an exhaust relay." The figure moved fast, drawing a short arc baton from his belt. It swung wide, crackling. Matt ducked under the arc and slammed the folding screwdriver into the baton's joint with a twist. The weapon sparked once and died. He didn't hesitate. Matt dropped his weight, turned the figure's arm, and forced him into the wall. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't pretty, but it was real, dirty, desperate. He grabbed the panel, yanked, and exposed a tethered uplink node that was clearly not standard Xarnak tech. Then he ran. Security detained him immediately. Not the crewman, Mac. He'd attacked a guest, the officer explained. "I stopped him from hotwiring your exhaust system into a kill switch," Matt growled. "There's something going on with that ship. You're being infiltrated. We have diplomatic processes." Matt gestured to his splinted hand. "I just disarmed a soldier using this. Do you think I'm doing it for fun?" Xarnak was summoned. He arrived with his usual calm, his advisors in tow. "Explain your theory," he said. "No theory. I saw the relay. I disabled a weapon. They're hiding crates in the lower bay with magnetic shielding. I don't know who they are, but they're not here for trade. They're setting up something internal." Xarnak gave him a long, unreadable look. "Why should we believe you?" Matt raised his hands, still scarred and stiff, palms up. "Because this is all I've got. And with these, I've fixed your systems, saved your crew, and now just took down a trained operative. You don't have to believe me. Just check the crates." An hour later, the crates were gone. So was the Kivar. The station denied any knowledge. The docking logs were wiped. Internal sensors malfunctioned conveniently. Security footage of the incident with the operative? Missing. It was a black swan event. Clean. Surgical. Only Matt remembered it. Only Gus had stored a local recording. Brief, blurred, but damning. Xarnak summoned him privately the next morning. "We believe you now," he said simply. "Good," Matt answered. "Because that wasn't a smuggler crew. That was a soft op." "Soft op?" Matt leaned back, ribs still sore. "An infiltration to test station vulnerabilities, to map reaction time. That means someone's prepping for something bigger." Matt tapped the table. "Doesn't matter who. What matters is what you're going to do about it." Xarnak hesitated. "We don't have human response protocols." "Then we make one." Matt was no soldier, but humans didn't need to be soldiers to be dangerous. He started with station schematics, then power distribution diagrams, then vent layouts and maintenance access points. He knew the guts of the station better than anyone, and he started sharing his knowledge. At first, the Xarnak were hesitant. But Matt didn't teach combat. He taught control panels, fuse resets, manual overrides. He made them run drills on accessing locked compartments, using only pressure calibrators and zip clamps. He trained a crew of 12 in basic mechanical response using only hand signals and improvised tools. They didn't learn to fight. They learned to think like a technician in crisis. Week 5, another ship docked. This one didn't broadcast a name. Zatir was already waiting. They claimed to be diplomats. Matt nodded. You believe them? I believe they will test us, just like the others. Matt rolled his shoulders. Then we make sure they fail. The station lights dimmed once during the visit. A test. Someone triggered a surge in the auxiliary battery systems. One of Matt's trainees, a Xarnak quartermaster, traced it to a maintenance shaft and found a pulse relay that could have shut down medical bay oxygen. It was removed, quietly. Matt didn't lift a finger. They handled it themselves. But the relay? He kept it. Took it apart with careful fingers, muttering to Gus as he examined the design. It wasn't Terran, and it wasn't Xarnak, which meant someone else was watching. Someone who still feared human weapons, and didn't yet understand what one man could do with his hands. Matt didn't get stronger. Not quickly. His ribs still limited his movements. His fingers still ached during long work sessions. But he adjusted, pushed past it, adapted. He made grips for his tools with molded padding to compensate for his healing bones. Built a brace to support his wrist while soldering. When his shoulder twinged, he created a lift mechanism so he could work one-handed without torque strain. The station offered him assistance. He declined. I need to know what I can do when things get worse. Gus blinked twice. Matt patted the drone gently. Because they always get worse. On day 37, something did get worse. The Kivar returned. Silent. No docking request. It just drifted in, lights flickering, venting vapor. Jatir ordered full quarantine, but Matt saw the pattern in the movement of the thrusters, the micro-adjustments. Someone was guiding it. Intentionally. Trap ship, Matt said. They're baiting you to board. Probably remote overrides waiting to shut the dock and vent you. Jatir nodded. How do we stop it? Matt studied the guidance pattern, then looked at the station's exterior maintenance grid. I need 2 hours. And a welding torch. You are not fully healed. No, but my hands still work. Exactly 2 hours later, Matt emerged from the airlock, his hands covered in soot and coolant gel, Gus floating at his shoulder. The Kivarer attempted a forced dock. It failed. Matt had manually severed 3 coupling lines and welded the emergency latches closed from the outside. The ship couldn't seal. Couldn't pressurize. It drifted uselessly until the station's magnetic claws caught it and flung it into deep drift. The crew? There was none. Just relay nodes, pulse recorders, scanners. A listening post. They wanted to know how we'd react, Zatir said. Matt nodded. Now they know. Jatir glanced at his blackened hands, skin blistered along the knuckles. You need medical attention. Matt wiped his forehead, leaving a dark streak. Later. Right now I need to reinforce your power nodes. If they come back with something stronger, you'll need redundancies. The consul's voice softened. Why do you keep helping us? Matt looked at his trembling fingers. Because you're not afraid of me. You're afraid of what I can do, and that means you're not the enemy. He turned back toward the maintenance shaft, his stride uneven but deliberate. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. But as long as his hands could hold a tool, someone would have a fighting chance. The first attack came at dawn station time on day 44. A hull breach on sub-level 4 triggered the emergency sirens, but the puncture was too precise, too deliberate. No debris, no meteor, no impact signature. It was drilled. From the outside, Matt bolted upright from his bunk the moment the alert sounded. His ribs protested, but he was mobile now. Scarred, stiff, but stronger than he'd been in weeks. He grabbed the mesh shoulder harness he'd built himself lightweight, cross-braced to protect the still healing bones, and hit the corridor at a brisk walk. The Xarnak were already on alert. Lights flickered red across the ceiling. Lockdown doors slammed into place with an urgency that hadn't been seen before Matt arrived. He found Zatir near the internal bulkhead, issuing commands with a calm intensity. "They're boarding," Matt said. Zatir nodded once. 5 pods, small, silent class. They cut through the thermal layer. "Inside already?" 2 minutes ago. Our scans were spoofed." Matt's jaw tightened. "Where did they land?" "Engineering, sublevel 4, the most vulnerable structural deck." Matt turned without asking and headed straight for the ladder shaft. "You are not combat personnel," Zatir called after him. Matt didn't stop. "Neither are you." The corridor was dark when he arrived. Emergency lights painted the walls in pulsing amber. Gus hovered ahead, scanning with passive sonar. They found the first breach in Corridor 4B, just a perfect, round hole in the wall, glowing faintly from melted edges. No damage to the structure around it. Whoever had come through was surgical. And fast. Matt crouched beside a small side hatch and pulled open an access panel. "They'll target critical infrastructure. Air, power, gravity. Take out any one of those and this place becomes uninhabitable." He traced the auxiliary feeds in his head, recalled which vents fed into the power stack, then made a decision. He took a deep breath, steadied his shoulder, and pulled a small tool roll from his belt. Inside was nothing more than a bent screwdriver, a tension loop, and a wire saw. He jammed the loop into the panel's junction box and started rerouting power away from the main grid. "Where are you disabling systems?" barked the Xarnak patrol officer who caught up to him. "I'm rerouting them. If they try to shut down power, it won't matter. They'll cut a dummy line. Takes time, not damage." "But they are armed." Matt looked up. "I'm not here to fight them. I'm here to slow them down, force them to make mistakes, buy time." 1 hour in, the invaders still hadn't been caught. They moved like ghosts, disabling cameras, bypassing seals. But they didn't expect the traps. Matt had rigged maintenance hatches to lock behind them, flooded shafts with pressure foam, built false corridors using plastic sheeting and magnetic fasteners, not to trap, but to redirect, confuse. He set one of the decoy paths himself, hands moving quickly, wrapping filament between corridor braces, setting reflectors to create false motion patterns. His fingers ached. The burned skin split in 2 places. Blood pooled in his glove. He didn't stop. They finally caught one near the thermal converters. Not because of a weapon, because he slipped on a patch of synthetic lubricant that Matt had poured deliberately on a sloped floor, knowing it would go unnoticed in emergency lighting. The assailant hit the deck hard, weapon clattering away. Gus buzzed a warning. Matt was first to arrive. He pulled the intruder's hood back. Not Xarnak, not human. Something lean, pale, eyes like black beads behind a breathing rig. Matt turned the head slightly, inspecting the gear. "Not here to kill. No heavy weapons. This was a recon." Jatser arrived with a security detail. "Why here?" Matt stood slowly, holding his ribs. "Because we've made this place hard to control. They want to know why. And they think the answer is you." He looked down at his hands. Blisters now. Burnt patches torn open from overuse. "They don't understand," he said quietly. "You've been learning, adapting. This isn't about human strength anymore. It's about hands that can teach others." In the following days, the invaders vanished. No message, no claim of responsibility, just gone. Matt didn't celebrate. He worked. He overhauled the SEAL protocols in Docking Bay 3, rerouted life support backups through isolated relays, reinforced the tool library with manual schematics, and built 3 non-digital override stations. He taught 5 new Xarnak how to strip, rewire, and reassemble a power regulator using only hand tools. No diagnostics, no automation. He also crashed. Hard. On day 52, Matt collapsed mid-walk between the hydroponics corridor and maintenance shaft 6. Gus buzzed alarm. Medical was dispatched. Matt was unconscious when they reached him. Dehydrated, feverish, one hand swollen and discolored. The cuts had grown infected. He hadn't noticed. The next 3 days, he didn't move. Jatir visited the med bay each cycle, staring through the glass. His recovery is uncertain, the medic said. His body pushed beyond limits, the infection reached the bloodstream. He requires antibiotics, fluid support, and rest. Will he recover if he does not lose the hand? Jatir looked at Matt's bandaged arm, thick tubing pumping medication into his veins. This is unacceptable, he said. His hands built this station's defenses. No, corrected the medic. His hands taught us how to build them ourselves. Matt regained consciousness 4 days later. Weak, arms trembling, muscles sore. His left hand was wrapped from knuckle to elbow, mobility restricted, nerves numb from inflammation and the tight pressure wrap. Still here? He whispered hoarsely. Jatir stood at his side. Yes. And so is your hand. Matt let out a slow breath. I thought I'd lost it. You came close. Sepsis, bacterial spread. 2 fingers nearly required surgical separation. Matt nodded slowly. But I didn't lose them. No, you did not. He lay in silence for a moment. Then, faintly, good, because we're going to need both when they come back. Jatir's voice dropped. Matt looked over. I didn't come here to lead. I came here to fix a ship. But I can't unsee what's coming. And if I'm not helping, I'm just waiting. Jatir gave a slow nod. Then rest. Your hands can't build anything if they're gone. Matt blinked slowly. Deal. Recovery was slow. 15 more days passed before Matt could flex all 5 fingers. He wore a brace, did grip exercises, dropped more bolts than he caught. But every day he practiced. Not for pride, for function. He taught with the other hand when needed. Built tools one-handed. Let Gus demonstrate when his joints locked. He refused modification. No synth nerve, he said. I need to know if I'm at my limit. Machines don't warn you. It took weeks, but his grip strength returned. Slowly, measured, real. By then the station no longer feared attacks. It prepared for them, because the fear of human weapons had given way to something else. A belief that hands, if taught, could build more than ships. They could build resilient. The station was different now. Not just in its layout, though, that had changed. Whole decks had been restructured with modular redundancies, crawl spaces lined with hand-latched emergency valves, tool caches hidden in walls labeled in both Xarnak glyphs and Terran shorthand. The changes ran deeper than engineering. There was a calmness in the way the station's inhabitants moved, a confidence. And not the kind born from strength. It was the kind born from knowing how to fix something when it broke. Matt walked with a limp. His shoulder still gave him trouble. His hand, the left one, had lost some dexterity in the 3rd and 4th fingers. But his grip was stable again. He could hold a tool, turn a bolt, write in blocky print. He couldn't run a kilometer, and he couldn't lift more than 15 pounds without aggravating the ribs that still hadn't fully knitted. But he could build. He could teach. And now he had students. The first technical unit of Xarnak origin was officially approved by the Station Oversight Council on day 79. It wasn't called a weapons division, not a defense corps. It was called the Hands Initiative. Matt didn't name it. They did. He tried not to show what it meant to him when he saw the patch's 5-fingered outlines drawn in silver thread, embroidered on dark blue cloth, worn high on their shoulders. Gus chirped at his side and flashed a readiness signal. Yeah, Matt murmured. I think they're ready. He was proven right 2 days later. The 3rd assault wasn't covert. No silent pods or masked infiltrators. This time it was loud, brutal. A frigate-class vessel dropped out of slipspace with no identifier and aimed a direct energy beam at the outer comms array. The impact shook the entire station, Emergency sirens screamed. Oxygen dropped in Deck 5. A secondary battery array overloaded on Deck 2. Matt was already headed for the ventilation shafts before the second impact hit. But he never reached the converters. He didn't have to. His trainees had already stabilized the power feed. Someone rerouted heat overflow through manual regulators. Someone else triggered counterpressure valves in time to prevent conduit rupture. A team was already sealing the outer hull damage with thermal plates before Matt could even open his tool pouch. He stopped halfway down the access shaft and leaned against the wall, stunned. Not because the response was fast, because it was exactly how he would have done it. The boarding crew never reached the inner decks. Gus had helped integrate a passive trip layer that flooded the docking corridor with high-density fog and magnetic debris. Disoriented, half-blind, and trying to operate weapons in a field designed to scramble electronics, they gave up less than 8 minutes after boarding. Xarnak defense crews swept in without panic, without error. And for the first time in its recorded operational history, the station was boarded and not breached. Jacques arrived at Matt's side 20 minutes later. "You didn't move during the response," he said. Matt nodded, watching the aftermath on the monitors. "Didn't need to. You trained them well." Matt looked down at his hands. "I didn't train them to fight. I trained them to think. Same way I learned. Crisis teaches fast." Jatir studied him for a long moment. "You knew this day would come." Matt's voice was quiet. "Yeah. I just didn't expect it would be the day I realized I'm not needed anymore." The station held a gathering that night. Not ceremonial, not formal, just a quiet recognition of what had happened. Matt sat on a bench near the Arboretum, watching a few dozen Xarnak walk by, some stopping to talk, others pausing to nod or offer small tokens of rings made from scrap wire, pieces of fused metal bent into geometric shapes. One even handed him a wrench carved from recycled resin. Jatir sat beside him. "We want you to stay." Matt considered that. "I could, but I've seen the fabricators now. You're using dual-phase printing. I spotted 6 improvised thermal seals on Deck 2, and someone on your staff reinforced a faulty coolant pipe with nothing but clamps and sealant rope. That wasn't me." Jatir was quiet. Matt gave him a tired smile. "You don't need me here to keep building. Then what will you do?" Matt let the question hang in the air for a long moment. "Somewhere else needs hands. There's always something broken." 2 weeks later, Matt boarded a Terran medical cruiser passing through the sector. The doc was cautious at first. His medical file had been flagged a dozen ways: scar tissue, compromised shoulder rotation, partial nerve damage in the left hand, chronic rib pain. But Matt passed the manual dexterity test with a near-perfect score. He didn't volunteer for combat support. He took the position of field technician, emergency patch-ups, system rebuilds, analog diagnostics, all done by hand. As he left the station, Gus trailing just behind, the docking crew saluted him not as a soldier, not as a commander, but as something older and harder to define: a builder, a restorer, a man who taught a species how to survive by doing what came naturally to him, fixing things. By the time the station fell behind into the void, Matt was already deep in the cruiser's maintenance bay, sleeves rolled, torch in one hand, trying to rebuild a clogged med pump from scratch. Across the quadrant, whispers spread. Not of Terran battle cruisers or orbital hammers, but of a man no weapons, no implants, just hands, who had arrived at a station on the edge of known space and taught its people to defend themselves not with force, but with resilience. They feared our weapons, until they saw what a human could do with his hands.